Good morning, church. I want to share with you the midweek reflection for this week. And this reflection is a little different than some that I've done in that it's a very personal thing for me. Nearly 9 years ago, I had to make what to me was a very important decision. My father had just passed away, and I was asked for an inscription to be written on his gravestone. Not only did the inscription need to reflect something about Dad, but the same stone would one day mark my mother's grave beside his, so it needed to represent her as well. I thought long and hard about what that inscription should be. Last week, I stood at that gravestone as we buried my mother there beside Dad. And I saw the words that had been inscribed there as a statement of their view of life. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Those words are no doubt familiar to you. They come from Philippians chapter 1, verse 21. What do these words mean? They express the governing view of life that drove the Apostle Paul and also others like my parents who understand the things that truly matter. To live is Christ. The very essence of Paul's then present life was Christ and all that this entailed. From the theological fact that Paul was identified with Christ in a vital spiritual union issued far-reaching practical implications. Christ had become for him the motive of his actions, the goal of his life and ministry, the source of his strength. The theological fact here, the one that animates the believer, is stated this way in Galatians 2:20, also written by the Apostle Paul. I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself up for me. Paul could say that to live is Christ because at the deepest level, Christ was in him and he was in Christ. A description used more than any other in the New Testament to describe the believer's living, saving union with Christ. The classic expression of this in Christ truth is in 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. In terms of practical implications, when Paul said, to me to live is Christ, he meant that Christ was not only the beginning and constant source of his life, but also its end and its goal. Thus, to live is Christ meant that Paul so totally wanted to glorify Christ that as long as he lived, everything about him was to point people to Christ. In effect, altogether, this meant that Christ was at the conscious center of everything, so that Paul had a Christ-centered life and ministry, a Christ-empowered life and ministry, and a Christ-exalting life and ministry. Paul fully understood that wealth, power, influence, possessions, prestige, social standing, good health, business or professional success, and all other such things, the consuming pursuits of most people, are transitory or passing. If these kinds of things were the driving pursuits of his life, he would ultimately be disappointed because they would do nothing to suit him for eternity. As Christ was his ultimate pursuit in life, he knew that death would be gain for him. And so he wrote that to die after such a life could only mean gain. For one thing, he would be eternally with Christ, the one who provided his spiritual identity. Furthermore, there would be no fear that death would deprive him of anything which really mattered, those things which he really prized. Death was a gain because he would see the Lord, enjoy him, and no longer endure the difficulties he was called to bear on earth. Paul's death would also mean that his righteousness in Christ would have its full effect. In death, his battle with sin would be over. Furthermore, In this world, Paul expressed pain after pain, trauma upon trauma, but at death it would all be over. No mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away, as we read in Revelation 21, verse 4. In death, the adversities of this life would be over, and he would be with Christ in heaven. Therefore, to die is gain. Philippians 1:21 provides a glimpse into the personal life of the Apostle Paul, but it also calls us as believers to be of like mind and like pursuit with him. As I stood at that graveside last week, I thanked God for parents who taught me what it means to live for Christ. And I also took comfort in the assurance that their deaths, they realized all of the gains of everlasting life.